This is the Acer Chromebook R13. Hi there folks, this is the Acer Chromebook R13. This is one of their more expensive, yet not entirely expensive, somewhat inexpensive Chromebook laptop 2-in-1 type keepers. I'm excited about this one. It seems to tick all the boxes for me, aside from maybe a backlit keyboard. It's more expensive in that it's about £100 more expensive than the next cheapest option, but it also has a few decent specifications about it that I would be quite keen for a Chromebook to have. So it's laptop, it has laptop, display, tent and pad variants, so you can use it as a tablet or prop it up in different ways because it's got a 360-degree rotating screen. The variant we have here is the MediaTek processor with quad-core CPU. I think that's a 2.1, but I might be mistaken. It doesn't seem to say here, but I can't remember. I've heard differing reports as to whether or not that's a good processor or not. Some people think it's lightning fast, others say it lacks a little, so I guess it depends on your background. It has 4 GB of DDR3 memory inside and a 64 GB eMMC SSD. It's an HD camera, 3-cell lithium polymer battery that promises up to 10 hours of usage, which is one of the most exciting things you could say to me whenever it comes to a laptop. So despite this being 300, I think it's £350 you can pick it up for. You can get it cheaper from various different places. I know Very have them. Amazon has some variants, but it's harder to get the one with 64 GB of storage. And given that this is compatible with the Android App Store, I think you're going to want or benefit from the extra bit of storage. So inside the box we have a fairly standard, well not so standard, power cable, complete with power brick and USB Type-C connector. We have the laptop there on top, which we'll come back to. We'll quickly examine the rest of the contents. We have a setup guide, as this is a Chromebook. You don't really need one. Declaration of conformities in various different languages. And then a warranty, which is sealed. So the laptop itself, this is the most exciting bit. Of all Acer's Chromebooks, this is the one I have the most interest in, because they have the R14, or the Chromebook 14 and the R11, but this is the most expensive of the bunch. And reading about it online, some people talk about how this is the build quality isn't top notch and it feels a bit bendy and things like that, so we're going to have a look at that to see what we can expect. And initial impressions are that it is very nice, but I've barely touched it now it's been out of this. We have like a chrome effect along here, which is kind of nice. It's plastic on top, but there's a bit of metallic feel around the edges to give it a bit more protection. We have this hinge here with 2 exposed screws. The one thing I have heard is that this is a little bit frail, bendy, but we'll get into that whenever we open her up. We have Chrome written here and then Acer written here, so that's very typical of the styling of the Acer Chromebooks in that way, and Chrome seems to be emblazoned on most Chromebooks, not all. So we have a speaker here, there's a volume rocker there. It'll be interesting to see how this works when you flip from tablet mode back to computer mode, because I think that should be able to flip as well. As I'm guessing it's just a bit of software, a little line of code just to make these flip round when this is flipped round. If the contents of the screen can flip, then this button can flip. There's a combi microphone and headset, or a headset connector there. We have an LED for well, it's got a glowing light bulb, and then battery, and then the power button and a Kensington lock. Then around this side we have the power connector, which is also a USB Type-C connector as well. We have an HDMI out, we have a USB 3.0, or possibly 3.1, and a micro SD card expandable storage slot. That and that, brilliant. Then here we have another speaker as well. On the underside we have speaker grills either side, little rubber feet in each corner, which is most recommended. There isn't one in the center. I always felt they should put one in the center, because sometimes, never mind. We have a bunch of exposed screws, serial number and all that kind of caper there as well. Opening her up, we have that generous, lovingly put together keyboard. I am a fan of this keyboard. I have used it on various different Acer Chromebooks in the past, and it's a nice keyboard. There is a bit of travel in the buttons, but just like a chiclet style keyboard, you know what to expect. Also, with the larger size of this, the 13-inch, you do get more space for between the buttons. You do still get some smaller buttons, mind you, which is a bit of a shame, but what can you do? This area here, nobody likes their keyboard to go right up to the very edge, but I guess they could have used that. We have a fairly generous trackpad that is clicky at the bottom, not at the top. Feels quite secure. There's a bit of wobble whenever I'm using it there. The screen does wobble quite a bit. It's full 1080 HD display, and obviously it's touchscreen as well. So the one thing I've heard is that this is a bit plasticky and a bit bendy, and it does. You can put a bit of stress onto it. I don't want to put too much stress onto it because it's actually a pretty brave weight, to be honest. Using it in tablet mode, you would need to set this up against something for tablet mode, because there is a heck of a weight in it. I'm not 200% sure. I'm not particularly sure about this hinge. It actually looks like that is a crack, and I think that's going to bother me for the duration that I have this. It does look like it's cracked there, but it's not. It's very, very slight, but it's the join in the plastic where this has been fused together. But it looks and feels a bit like it's cracked, and perhaps that could be one of the first things to go. There is a bit of movement in it. Over here you can push it away from the unit, and just doesn't feel like the best hinge in the world, but I'm sure it'll work for a wee while at least. It'll get me through the next couple of weeks. The screen itself is quite thin. It's quite slight. There's not much to it. And then down here we have a fairly difficult to see reflective sticker pad that shows Acer Chromebook 13, laptop display, tent, iPad, Google Play Store included, 12 hours of battery life, USB Type-C, full HD IPS technology, and a wide field of view webcam. Sweet. So we'll turn her on and see if we're initially impressed by the screen. I'll try and get it so that the light glare isn't too intrusive. Okay, so we've got it up here. We have the Chrome welcome screen in, and the screen does look good and high quality. If we I'm going to zoom in some of the figures here just to see if you can see any pixels. Having a wee zoom in, you can see some pixels there, but it's not particularly low res, and being a 1080p screen, it does look quite well on the eye. It'll be interesting to see going on just how well this works, especially whenever you're watching something on maybe Netflix or what have you. So we'll get her set up, and it'll probably take a wee while for it to download all the bits and pieces from my Chrome profile. Okay, so while that does its whole update type thing, we do have a significant bezel here and about half an inch there, 3/4 of an inch on the top. Then the webcam is in there. That must be the microphone. It does look like there's a little infringement on the edging just there. I'll put this in. Okay, so that's our Google account set up. Yes, it is a decently sized bezel around the outside, but the screen is not particularly affected by it, and the greens of the fields and things here, it looks gorgeous. It is a nice screen, especially when you consider the price of this laptop. If you were to pay the same money for a Windows laptop, you probably would not be getting as good a screen here, but obviously we'd be getting a slightly faster processor and things because Windows requires a slightly faster processor. Going down to the keyboard, we have the typical Chrome function buttons across the top, not F buttons, but dedicated function buttons with back and forward, reload, full screen mode, and that's screenshots and all that kind of caper. Settings, no, brightness up and down, volume up and down and off, and then the lock button over here. All the fonts are in lowercase, which I kind of like, to be honest. There's no capital B for backspace, or the ESC for escape is all lowercase. It's kind of nice. Tab button, then the caps lock is a search. Control, Alt and Shift over here are good big sized buttons for bashing them, but I'd say Control and Alt are two buttons that you don't tend to use terribly often, and it might have been nicer to have a bigger return button or a dedicated delete button, which I can't think of a Chromebook that's ever had a dedicated delete button. Alt-GR and Alt, there's obviously smaller versions over this side as well for repetition's sake. The keyboard doesn't have much flex in it, which is kind of cool, but then it's a very, very thin design, so you've probably got the battery in behind there that just helps prop up the keyboard a good bit. But otherwise it does look like a decent combination of stuff. I wish it had a backlit keyboard, because that would have been just the icing on the cake. Actually, I've just noticed the little rubber feet there for protecting the screen whenever you close it, which is always nice. There's one missing there, but there's an indentation here for you to stick your finger in to open the screen. And other than that, it just looks like a nice Chromebook experience. So I'm looking forward to playing with this and just seeing how much we can get out of it. And I plan on doing an Acer Chromebook shootout, because I have the R11, the Acer Chromebook 14, and this R13 all in the house at the moment. So I'm going to do a benchmarking face-off to see which of those is fastest, and I think there's one result that's going to be a little bit surprising, because I've already had a wee go with the other two. So that's the Acer Chromebook R13. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments box down below. Hit that subscribe button and give us a wee thumbs up if you fancy, and other than that, take care.